All right, hello everybody. So today I'm joined by Robin Wyatt. She is the Chief Marketing Officer at AtlantiCare, South Jersey's largest healthcare organization, with a rich history that includes key roles in marketing agencies, the Walt Disney Company, and Northwell Health. Robin brings a wealth of experience in strategic and performance-driven marketing. She's known for her experience in building brand strength and creating best-in-class marketing campaigns. Robin, welcome.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. So, really excited for this conversation. Would love to get things started by learning a little bit more about you and your background.
Sure, happy to. I started my career on the agency side, working for marketing agencies and agencies of record for companies like Burger King, and spent a few years, probably 5, 6 years on that side of the business, and decided that going on the client side was more appealing to me. I wanted to be building strategy and working on things really at its infancy, and transitioned over to entertainment. It had always been an area that I focused on the agency side of work, and moved in-house at the Walt Disney Company as a manager early in my career. Had the Had a chance to spend 8 wonderful years based out of Burbank working on the digital side of the Walt Disney Company's work, and then transitioned out to New York and spent 8 more years working on their live entertainment properties. A couple of years ago, I got a call from Northwell Health, which is the largest nonprofit employer in New York State, asking about joining healthcare. And while I had had calls many times in the past from healthcare insurance and other insurance companies, it just wasn't the right time. And during the height of a global pandemic, I decided that was my moment to put my marketing skills to mission work, and made the transition into healthcare. Spent a couple of years at Northwell Health and am now CMO at AtlantiCare. As you mentioned, we're based here in South Jersey, and we are a small community hospital making a big impact here in the area.
Wow, that's great. What an interesting path and journey. I'd love to kind of double click on a few of those things there. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is, 16 or so years at Disney related companies. Obviously a really respected, company. I would love to hear like how that experience there shaped, who you are today.
The short answer to that is it has shaped everything, right? I mean, I got a master class in all things marketing through Disney University, essentially. I got to be boots on the ground for many years, learning the Disney way, as I call it. How do we put customers first? At Disney, we call them our guests. How do you have a customer first centric approach? How do you make sure that your brand is always succinct on message, clear, concise, consistent, no matter the experience? And those lessons learned throughout my tenure and as I advanced to executive roles at Disney have shaped who I am and how I approach marketing. At Disney, while I didn't work on the hotel side in the parks, I worked more in the digital space and on the live entertainment space. You talk about heads and beds, right, on the hospitality side. And live entertainment, we talk about, butts and seats. How do you sell tickets to your events? And in healthcare, we talk about our patients somewhat in the same way, right? How do we make sure that we're filling schedules and appointments and making sure that we are the healthcare organization of choice? No different than what Disney has taught you, which is how to be the destination of choice, how to be the live entertainment theater of choice, how to be the cruise ship of choice. So it really has shaped everything I do, and how I think about the guest experience is how I think about a patient experience today. And I'm always reminded, or I should say, I always remind the people around me, we are all consumers of marketing. How do we want to be spoken to? How can we take the best of what Disney does and borrow it in our day to day? And I carry that not just from Disney, but the best of all companies, right? How do you take the best of what they do, best of how Amazon checks you out with one click? How do you apply that to everything we do? And I borrow a lot from a lot of companies, but I definitely borrow a lot from my education and my training coming from Disney.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, a lot of parallels that maybe you wouldn't initially, have thought of, but as you explain it, definitely makes a lot of sense. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. So after Disney, you moved into healthcare, which, as you started to say in the beginning, you kind of got this call.
Yeah.
but that seems like a very different industry than Disney. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did that come about, and what were your thoughts on making that type of transition, especially during a pandemic?
Sure. On paper, it seems like a huge pivot to go from entertainment to healthcare. In reality, all marketers understand there are guiding principles to what we do and how we think about our business. And when you actually put pen to paper and think about writing the strategy, building the marketing plans, thinking about your advertising, your communication strategy, your social presence, even your research, at its core, it's all the same. It's about how do you connect with people? How do you connect with them in their journey and meet them where they are? And it doesn't matter if they're planning a vacation or picking a Broadway show to visit in New York City or anywhere around the world. It really is no different than how you choose a physician and how you make sure that you're getting quality, you're getting a good guest experience, a good consumer or patient experience. So while it looks like a big industry pivot, I could actually make the argument that when I shifted from a digital lens at Disney, when I was LA based, to New York, which was live theater based, that was as significant of a pivot because I was going from a total digital experience to what could not be any less digital, which is people on stage giving their all every night. The show must go on, whether it's a power failure, a water main burst, a costume malfunction, you just keep moving. And healthcare, certainly during a pandemic, is a great example of that philosophy of the show must go on. You roll up your sleeves and you do no harm. So the opportunity to work in that space was exciting. I had considered a move out of entertainment for a few years prior to making the final decision. I needed something that would excite me, something that would truly challenge me. And I don't know that it would have been healthcare had it not been a year into a global pandemic where we were seeing the impact of what was happening. And I would often say to my team when they would get upset about a project or challenged or frustrated, I would remind them, we're not curing cancer. Everyone take a deep breath, right? This is about entertainment. This is about disposable income. Everyone breathe. I now am in a unique position to say, well, I'm never going to be a physician and I'm never going to cure cancer. If I can get a patient to see a doctor, to find out what's ailing them, to get an x-ray, to get a mammogram, if I can be a part of that person's journey to wellness and to healing, then I feel like now I'm in the right place to do that mission-driven work. And that's how I approach the marketing. How can I, as a consumer of healthcare, think about making it a little less scary and a little less fear-based for anyone who has an ailment and is just too nervous to find out what it's about, right? We talk in a lot of jargon. How do I get rid of all of that and just approach people where they are and how they want to be spoken to?
Yeah, no, I really love that. I love your overall mindset of how you've been able to find these parallels to past experiences and use those as really fuel to, to fire you in the future here. So that's really great. I appreciate that. So let's go way back. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Did you initially want to go into marketing? Was that part of the plan? Were you the kid that had the lemonade stand that was set up, or did you have some other sort of career aspirations?
It's a great question. I've been very fortunate. Once I found marketing, I knew it was my path. It took me a minute to find it. I knew I wanted to work in business. That was interesting to me. I thought it was going to be business finance. I have an acumen for numbers, so I figured, let's just follow that path. Joined college. I went to USC and joined their business program there, which is a very rigorous undergraduate program. And I joined as a finance major. And after my first year, I started to question, can I do this the rest of my life? Does it excite me? And decided to take a summer class in order to help lighten my workload. I took a summer class in marketing so I could check the box. And I fell in love day one. I knew instantly this was my calling. I loved that I had the opportunity to take numbers and complement it with creative. So I always tell people when doing informational interviews or speaking engagements, I always say to people who are interested in marketing, to be clear, advertising and marketing are two different things. Advertising is the creative side. Marketing, you got to be able to commit to the numbers. So this gave me a nice chance to use my left and right side of my brain. Never looked back after that class. that teacher played such a big role in paving the way for my future. And I've been very fortunate to follow that path in a journey that has just taken me in lots of different directions, two coasts, different jobs, different experiences, different industries, but always knowing that as long as I'm working on products that I believe in or services, I'm good. Would I recommend them to my friends and family? That was my guidepost always in every job I did.
Yeah, that's a great lens to look at it. So as you said, you've had a lot of transitions, East Coast, West Coast, different industries. People out there, might feel stagnant, right, in their job. What advice might you give to them based on your experience?
Oh, that's a hard one. I would say to anyone, listen to that little voice, right? Listen to your instinct. That voice, it's going to get louder and louder over time, but listen to that little voice that, the little devil on your shoulder that's asking you, why am I not engaged? What do I like? What don't I like? What are the things I enjoy most? And start exploring, networking, talking to your friends, put it out there. Every opportunity I've had has not been simply because I applied for a job. It was because I told people, I think I'm ready for something new. And I was on their radar when the phone rang, right? When they had that opportunity, when an HR hiring manager or a recruiter said, hey, I'm looking to fill a position. I wonder if Robin's interested in the next thing. They knew I was out there. I was engaging. I was talking to people and I was being very open. Not that I was looking, but that I was exploring new challenges, questioning where I wanted to be next, engaging with people. So I would say listen to your instincts, listen to that little voice because it's telling you something. Go out, say yes. I always believe years ago, I took the challenge of the year of yes. When people would message me on LinkedIn, I said yes. I took the calls. I put in the time. I carved out 1 hour every day to say yes to people. And I've met amazing people and have had incredible opportunities because of it. Things that I would not have done. It's easy to just say, I've worked a hard day, I'm going home. But instead, I went to that cocktail event. I went to that speaking engagement. I took an interview in a conversation with you, Christian, right? You say yes. And that's kind of been my mantra. While it started out as a one-time deal for 1 year, I continue to say yes and tell people what I'm interested in, what I'm doing, and I'm now on their radar. So get out there. That's what I would say. Make it your year of yes.
Wow, I love that. I've never heard that before. The year of yes, really good mantra. I think I'm going to have to adopt that as well. Thank you for sharing that. So, Robin, really interesting background. I'd love to shift gears a little bit now and talk a little bit more about where you're at here today. So, tell us a little bit about AtlantiCare and your current role and remit.
Sure. So I am the Chief Marketing Officer for AtlantiCare. This is a role that has been vacant for 10 years, roughly, prior to my joining. A lot of work is being done here in the community, but marketing was never their focus. And in recent years, they recognized it was time to really put the quality of what they do out there in the market. They needed more than just the patient's word of mouth, but someone to really pull together as they grow and expand in this market, really pull together a marketing strategy of what does the future of AtlantiCare look like and how do we streamline the brand and the communications. So AtlantiCare, as you mentioned, large South Jersey healthcare provider. We're about 6,200 employees at 100 plus locations. And that includes hospitals, urgent cares, physician provider offices, freestanding emergency departments. So we are really truly based here in the community with the remit as a company we all abide by, which is how do we take care of the health and well-being of our communities that we serve. That's the mission of the work. And I'm here to make sure that within our communities, our patients and our future and prospective patients understand that we provide the highest level of care and quality that they can choose from. And there are a myriad of choices for healthcare, and we want people to know that we are best in class and that everything they need is right here. They don't need to drive to Philadelphia. They don't need to travel to New York. They can get the care they need right here at home with their loved ones nearby.
Yeah, that's great. Well, congratulations on this new role. So yeah, you kind of touched on something that I want to double click on here. healthcare, very competitive, space right now. How are you starting to think about how you're going to get that message out and how you're going to differentiate from, those other organizations?
Yeah, healthcare is a lot of the sea of sameness. We see it everywhere. So the charge that I have to my team here is how do we break through that? How do we differentiate? The challenge that I've placed to our agency partners on the media and the creative side is one further to say, if you can pull out my logo and drop in any other healthcare company, then we missed the mark, right? The brief is how can we make sure that we are different than everyone in a true sea of sameness? You always have to be present, you always have to be there, but how do we break through, right? These are all basic challenges that every marketer and every agency faces in different industries. So upon my first week here, after many interviews, I kept hearing a repeating theme, which is we are a hidden gem. Every single interview said we're the best kept secret, we're a hidden gem. So I knew day one when I arrived, that was the first thing I had to tackle, this misperception of a hidden gem. We are not hidden. We have a very large market share, but we are a gem that people maybe don't realize. So my number one strategy day one was elevate and celebrate. That's what we're doing, right? So in these first 90 days on the job, what I've been focused on is getting to know the business, but making sure that every single communication, internal and external, elevates our brand. We are no longer quiet and humble. We are actually putting our awards out on display. We are touting our successes in a way that, while is humble, is also letting the community know that we are a force, right here in their backyard to help them. And when we do that, we are celebrating our staff, we are celebrating our patients, we are celebrating our successes. It all follows. And that's been my mantra since day one. How do we elevate and celebrate this brand and what it does in the community? Because it's not just about patient care. We give back. This year, we celebrate 125 years. It's a very big milestone in November. And in that time, we have given back over $1 billion in community support. So we are very much a member of this community. And I want to celebrate that. And I want to make sure everyone understands it. So, that's kind of how I think about the marketing and the tactics we need to use. And from that, strategy is born, because we do need to make sure that we are differentiated. And that work is underway right now. Some of that differentiation requires us to take a step back to move forward. One of the first things I did when I joined, I noticed logo soup everywhere. Within the company, when you're 125 years old, a lot of departments and organizations have modified our logo to serve their needs. So we're going to go back and we're going to make us one united company with one united look and feel. And I knew from day one, looking at materials, that was important. So I was able to get those RFPs in the market so that come 90 days into my role, we were going to hit the ground running. We weren't just starting the process, right? There was a lot of listening and learning happening, but what can we activate on so that we're ready to go when the time is right? And that's going to be important to how we break through our messaging, right? How we are perceived. And that's the Disney way. How do you make sure that brand is clear, concise, and consistent?
Wow. Yeah. Well, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and you were sharing just how you hit the ground, running really fast, and I really, really appreciated that. Would love to hear a little bit, more about like how within the first week were you able to, have an RFP and out the door already? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so in fairness, it was probably the end of week 2,
Okay.
maybe top of week 3. A few different approaches, right? We have, in my first 90 days here, we have sent out multiple RFPs. They've come in different waves and timing. They were sent for multiple reasons. Some of them were to help understand where we can go. We've had the same agency partners for a long time. I'm not necessarily interested in changing them. I want them to engage in the process, but I wanted the team here, who had been here as long as our agency partners, to think differently about where we can go. How can, you get stuck in a routine. It's very easy. It becomes rote. So how can we think differently about our business? And to do that, we wanted to engage others to share their ideas, to help understand their vision of how they would break us out of the clutter and elevate and celebrate this brand that we've built, and its legacy. So some of them were very easy. It was going to partners that I knew, asking our colleagues here, agencies and partners that they knew. And to be perfectly fair, I always include a wild card in every RFP that I do. And that comes out of my year of yes. People I've spoken to who a conversation at a conference or a LinkedIn conversation, something about their work just sparked a piece of interest. And while I can't vouch for their team yet, maybe they are the wild card that will really surprise me. If nothing else, they will educate me on their future work. And in the instance of a brand RFP that we're doing, there was a wild card that came out. And we said, they're not right for this piece of business, but we have a project for them. And we're now engaging with them on a smaller project level so we can get to know who they are. So we looked at what is the work that's in front of us? What do we have to shore up quite freely? What's the work that has to be done on the publicity side, on the brand side, on the creative side? And that's how we started, just talking to people to understand their needs.
Yeah.
And we do rely very heavily on our agency partners. Our media partners, very strong. Their creative is very strong. But there was time that wasn't being spent on executive publicity, as an example. We have an interim CEO. He's been a member of our board for 15 years. And we said, how are we going to feature him in a meaningful way, having had a CEO that retired who'd been with the company for 40 years, her full tenure? So those were the RFPs we knew we needed to get out quickly.
Wow. Well, congrats for all that hard work. Curious, what are some of the KPIs that you're being held to in your role, and how are those shaping maybe these RFPs or other work that you are planning here in the near future?
Sure. I think the KPIs are pretty standard in marketing, right? Are we driving volume? Are we driving interest? Is our brand awareness high? Is our market share growing? Those are all the basic bread and butter. Again, any industry. What I like to challenge my team on is to go one step further in, does it elevate the brand? Does it have a positive brand investment? Is it growing profit or revenue in some way? Is it a key priority, right? I'm always asking the team, not just the performance indicators, but how are we prioritizing as well? Because you can drive volume as much as you want, but if we don't have access to appointments, or you're having a bad guest experience, a bad patient experience on the other end, that money was wasted. So it's not always just the metrics. It also has to be about the entire journey. And how do we map the patient from the minute they see a billboard all the way through to their patient engagement with a physician, and ultimately maybe long-term the surgical centers or an inpatient treatment for a joint replacement or for a heart testing on their hearts in our cath lab. So I look at not just the hard metrics, but also the soft sciences around it as well. Are we focused on our key priorities? Are these our business objectives? Are we focusing on the right stuff? Are we resourced correctly? And how can we use automation to enhance the work we're doing? Because at the end of the day, I want to work smarter, not harder. We'll be able to do a lot more with less, if ever put in that position, if we can shore up our automation and how we are processing and working together as a team. So of course, at the end of the day, my number one job is always drive patient growth. That doesn't change. But how we get there, there's a lot of factors in a large organization that will impact that. So I like to look at both sides of the coin, not just the data, but also the insights and perceptions in the marketplace.
Sure, absolutely. So you touched on something there that I want to come back to. You mentioned automation. I'm curious, thinking ahead, where do you see the future of marketing, specifically in the healthcare segment, going? I mean, obviously, right now, a lot of talk is all about AI, whether it be AI or other things. Where do you see things going?
Everyone talks about AI, and I'm gonna have to pause on that. I need to get back to you. I'm sorry, I need like 20 minutes. Sorry. We're gonna have to ask the question again so we can edit this out.
Oh, good. Yeah. What did I even say here? Okay.
You asked about AI. It's not going to be a great answer, but go ahead, ask the AI question.
Okay. So you touched on something earlier that I want to come back to. You had mentioned automation, and I would love to get your perspective on where you see marketing going. At the time we're recording, all the rage right now is AI. So whether it's AI or something else, like, where do you see the future of healthcare marketing going?
It's a great question. I always like to take a step back again before we go forward. And people are all they talk about is AI, right? And we think it's like the robots are going to take over and write our briefs, and the robots are going to create our creative campaigns. I don't really think about AI that way. I think there are tools that we can leverage, but at the end of the day, a smart SMS campaign, a smart chatbot, these are all AI tools that we're already using. So how do we make them smarter? How do we make sure that they are fully engaged in our experiences? If I'm sending out text messages, if I'm chatting with someone in a forum, if they are filling out a questionnaire, how is all that information coming back into one centralized place where we can have smart communications and relevant communications with our consumers, with our communities and our patients? So for me, AI is less about it creating something wholly new, but rather how do we leverage smart technologies to have better conversations and better engagements with our patient base here? How can I use a television screen in an inpatient room to train you on wound care after having surgery so that you can free up nursing staff that don't have to walk you through paperwork, right? How do we do interactive learning and questions? There's so much that AI can help us with, but at the end of the day, I think the word AI scares people, and we have to take it down a step and say, these are all technology and automations to help make our days smoother, more productive, and more successful. We use AI every day in social listening. We use AI every day in following our patients through their digital journey, all the way through to booking an appointment so we can check ROI. To me, when AI and automation can help us determine successfulness, impactfulness of a campaign, those are the things that I look for from a future state, right? We're moving into a cookieless world. We're not going to have as much data at our fingertips that we can use from a marketing and remarketing campaign. Our first party data needs to be so clean and so clear that we are having engaging conversations, meeting people where they are. That's what I think the future of AI truly can be. I'm not ready to let the robots build my creative campaign. We can write all the science around it. Something about it is just about the heart that you need to always have to infuse into it, and the personal touch. So I don't think we will be obsolete, but I think there's certainly ways for us to work smarter, leveraging the tools that exist and thinking about how to integrate them even further.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. I echo, a lot of the same type of sentiments that you have. I don't think the robots are going to take over the world, but but they're a great tool to use and to enhance and speed up processes as well. So I want to shift gears a little bit here. You had mentioned earlier about your team. I'd love to know a little bit more about that team. How big is it? What are their main responsibilities versus, say, the agencies that you're working with? Are you trying to expand your internal team? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So my team currently is about 20 people or so and growing. Their remit is really focused on brand management, advertising and media, creative services, internal and external comms, and our digital services, CRM, web platforms, our apps to help patients and our patient portals. We also have a large number of agencies that we work with, and I view them as an extension of my team. In order for that relationship to be successful, they are augmented staff in many ways, right? I look to them to participate in what we're doing and be part of our processes so that we can work together more smoothly. So we manage all the marketing for our brand. We manage all of the marketing for our individual service lines, which for us are key areas like behavioral health, cancer services, orthopedic services, et cetera. And the team also manages our web presence, our patient portal presence, and most importantly, our CRM, right? How do we move people through the pipeline?
Sure, great. And what about the agencies? What are some of their main focuses?
Sure, we have quite a few.
How many agencies do you have?
We are a small team, but we are growing as we continue to look at our scope and span of work and what we're trying to achieve. We're building plans for the next 5 years, and that takes scale to build and make sure that it's sustainable. The agencies, like I said, who are an augmented staffing model for me in many ways, they are important to our team. We have teams working on our creative services and media buying. We have an agency that is managing our brand management and defining the brand architecture and hierarchy for us. We have a team that helps us with our publicity. We manage internal. We look to them to help get our brand and our message out locally and nationally so that we can be a part of the national conversation on healthcare. We also have developers and implementers who help us on the website. And most importantly, CRM, such a big part of what we do in the full enterprise-wide thinking of how to follow a patient journey. So we work with very talented consultants and agencies to help make sure that our CRM is built smart and scalable so that we can make the most of that tool at every patient engagement.
Gotcha. And when you mentioned, earlier about sending out RFPs, and you kind of leveraged your network, your team's network, you had the yes. What do you look for though in an agency partner? How important is healthcare experience? You come outside of healthcare, and you thought that was a big advantage. Do you consider agencies ever that don't have healthcare experience, or tell us a little bit about that?
So for every RFP I send out, pretty standard process. I have a scoring criteria that is determined long before the RFPs come back because we don't want it to be biased or informed by anything they've said. So we look at things like, do they have healthcare experience? Healthcare is a very specific piece of the market with HIPAA compliance. So we look for it. It is not critical, depends on the work they're doing. If you're working in brand architecture, that experience doesn't have to translate solely to healthcare. But if we're going to talk to you about data warehousing, HIPAA compliance is going to be very important to us. So we score it and weight it according to what the brief is and what we're looking to fulfill. So, that is, of course, a consideration. Their expertise in their market, right? Not necessarily my market, but in their area of focus. Are they truly subject matter experts? Do they have access that we couldn't get? How will they staff their team to really augment our work? What we don't want to do is bring on an agency and have to bring on 3 more people to support the agency. So how do we really work together in partnership? What is their case studies, right? What do they look like? I can find the link between examples. It doesn't need to be within my in the healthcare sector, but how do they think differently? How are they reaching out? What new ideas are they bringing to the table? Those are all the things that I score them on, capabilities, et cetera. And then I always keep a wild card at the end, which is a bonus points for an unknown factor. What did they tell us? There's always a question at the end that says, tell me something I should know about you. Tell us something we didn't ask that might inform our decision making. And in that scope, we always leave a couple extra points to say, I can't put my finger on it, but I know this company. Or this extra answer tells me that they can do exactly what we wanted. Or they shared with me a case study that was out of context, but shows me how they think differently. Those are all the things. And in fact, I will even go as far as to say sometimes just the presentation matters. How they think and present themselves is how they will present me. So a Word document that is is all words might be treated differently than a very thoughtful Keynote or PowerPoint PDF, something that's been sent as a PDF that shows me how they take pride in their own brand, speaks volumes for how they'll think about my brand. And those are the unknown factors that you can't really judge, but you always want to make sure there's a little wiggle room to make some decisions. Personality is the other big thing. I always meet with companies before I send out the RFP so that we are both agreeing that if we're putting you in the RFP process, you are truly a contender, and that we're not giving you a bait and switch. You know exactly what the work is going in. It takes a lot of time for an agency to put together an RFP. I've been on that side. I don't want to waste anyone's time. So I always appreciate it when an agency says, this isn't my scope of business, but here are the things that we do when you're ready for it. And I call them back because they were honest about what they can do. So, it's about honest and open dialogue and knowing that you want to work with people. No different than an interview. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking to you in the course of a week, a month, a quarter. Do I like you? Do I want to work with you? Can I put you in front of my executives? If I have a big presentation, those are the things I look for.
Yeah, wow. Gold there for all the agencies that are listening and reading this right now. A lot of gold, a lot of note taking should be done. So really appreciate the transparency. Thank you for all of that there.
My pleasure.
So I want to wind things down a little bit. We're coming up on time, but
I'm curious, marketing continues to change. The pace of change just keeps accelerating. How do you stay up on all of these changes that are happening? Are you someone that is following things on social media? Are you following trade publications, going to conferences? The power of yes. Tell us a little bit about how you stay on top of things.
The answer is yes to all of that. It's probably the thing that keeps me up at night is thinking, what didn't I read? What don't I know? What's coming, right? In the course of the day and just getting your work done and leading teams and managing the work that's in front of you, how do you carve out time to do all that other stuff? I read a lot. I love a good excerpt, a good nugget, a good reference. I'm on social media. I use social media a lot as a curated place of content for what I should be reading. I game the system. I click on things knowing that if I click on them, I will get served more. So I often game the system to change my algorithm and my feeds. I listen to webinars while I'm eating lunch. I have taken up the habit of, depending on the type of webinar or podcast it is, I will do a webinar that's not heavy on the visuals. I will do it on my drive home just to spend an hour listening and learning. So I'm always looking for information. I scan newsletters every day. I get a large amount of them. I pick out one or two articles that are relevant. And those inform where I go, right? I wish I had more time to sit and really process and read. I do that a lot on the weekends. I have things that I've saved and I sit down, and in the morning when the house is quiet, I go through all those newsletters and do a bit of a deeper dive. But yes, I'm touching everything, looking for that nugget that will inspire me, because, any conference I go to or a keynote I give, it's always inspired by all the information that's out there and what others are doing and what the market research is telling me. So yes to everything.
Wow. That's
And
great.
I wish I could do more of it, honestly. I wish there was more time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great. It sounds like you have a process, gaming the algorithm. I like that. So very cool. And I do a lot of those same things, so it resonated with me. So Robin, this has been a really great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're only a couple months into the role and got a lot going on. So thanks for taking the time to speak to us. I know people that are out there listening to this want to keep track of all the great work that you're doing. Where's the best place for them to stay on top of what you and the work that you're doing at AtlantiCare?
Yeah, the best place to go is to follow our social channels. We are on Instagram. Follow us on LinkedIn. Most importantly, AtlantiCare is our LinkedIn profile. We're here in South Jersey. That's where we showcase the work we're doing, our achievements. So that's the best place. Of course, our website, AtlantiCare.org, is available, but it is really focused on the patient experience. That's not where you're going to see the work that we're doing and the work of the executive team across the organization. So AtlantiCare on LinkedIn is the place to go. It's linked to my profile at Robin Wyatt. So hope to see you guys, join and follow our channels.
Awesome. Well, Robin, thank you again so much for
Pleasure.
being on.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Take care.